Battle in Zimbabwe, moving from the ballot boxes and the streets to the court, and of course that legal challenge is set to take place on Wednesday. Let's chat now to Ray Ndlovu on the line from Harare. He's the Mail and Guardian correspondent in Zimbabwe. And Ray, I don't know what you're hearing, but apparently the MDC Alliance contracted a few very prominent South African lawyers. We've got Dali, Mpofu, Tembeka, Ngcukaitobi, Jeremy Gauntlet. We're hearing reports tonight that they've not been granted a permit to work, so they won't be able to take part. Can you confirm that?
Well, thank you for having me, Francis. Just a quick correction of the Sunday Times, not the Mail and Guardian. But yeah, indeed, we are getting the same kind of reports as far as the South African legal team not having access to work permits to be able to represent the MDC Alliance on Wednesday, and the MDC Secretary General raised concern earlier on about these developments. But I watched on social media at this point in time reports really and the circulation of what appears to be a letter. This letter is not verified as far as having a stamp from the Ministry of Justice as well as a signature from the Justice Minister himself. But this is the concern that's there tonight, and as far as where the legal team for the MDC Alliance is and whether they'll be allowed to actually represent their client on Wednesday.
So that would be a big blow for the MDC Alliance. Thank you for that correction there, Ray. So the MDC now basically claiming that the elections were not free nor fair. They were very concerned about the electoral body that oversaw these elections. Are the courts in Zimbabwe seen as a better arbiter in this matter?
I think the courts definitely are seen at this point as the last stop in this long, drawn-out process because, like you indicate, there's been a lot of juggling between the MDC Alliance and the Electoral Commission, and with the MDC Alliance claiming that they were not being treated fairly by the Electoral Commission. So in this process right now, I think the only arbitration where everything lies on is with the courts. The courts do have a history of, handing at times judgments that are seen to favor the ruling party. And we've seen in the run-up as well to the election some sort of judgments coming out from them, in particular stopping Zanu-PF or not ruling in Zanu-PF's favor in as far as having school children attending rallies by Zanu-PF. So those are some of the things that we've seen as feature of the independent judiciary. But people that have spoken to here in Harare have respect in terms of the legal system, in terms of the Chief Justice and the people who are going to preside over this process on Wednesday.
And how long could the case last? In the meantime, can you confirm Emmerson Mnangagwa is president, but his inauguration following the poll results delayed?
Yes, he's still the president at this moment. The entire process really has to be wrapped up by Friday, where we expect a decision to be made. And we understand that after a decision is made, 48 hours after the decision, an inauguration has to be done. So depending on when the decision is announced by the courts, then we will have a decision coming out and a new inauguration process within 48 hours.
This whole case is about the poll results, but 2 days after the polls, we saw that violence on the streets. 6 people were killed, police firing at demonstrators. Where is that? Have there been any attempts, Ray? What's the feeling on the ground about the attempts of police or prosecutors to find anyone responsible?
No, at this point, there's no indications of any arrests taking place or to try and apprehend the people that were involved in, in that skirmish that we saw, post-election violence on the 1st of August. And so the only thing that has been said by authorities, and in particular by the President, Emmerson Mnangagwa, is that he's instituting an independent commission to preside over this process, and we still wait to see who are the people who are going to be part of that process to try and unearth what exactly transpired, who ordered the army to go out into the streets and to fire live ammunition on civilians, resulting in the deaths of 6 people.
Well, the prosecutors have gone after MDC leaders. So the whole issue of Tendai Biti, one of the co-leaders of the MDC Alliance, we heard that he had gone to Zambia. Not sure if he had crossed the border. I think more details are emerging of Zambia basically sending him back to Zimbabwean officials. What's the full picture there?
Yeah, he was then deported and came back to Zimbabwe last week, and his trial is underway at the moment, and he's out on bail, $5,000 given that bail. So he's appearing in court and is facing charges of inciting public violence. You do recall that Tendai Biti did make strong statements just the day after the election to say that they had the evidence that shows that Nelson Chamisa of the MDC Alliance had won convincingly, and he then declared him the winner of that election. And under the electoral laws in Zimbabwe, that's not allowed. The only people or the only body that can make that announcement is the Electoral Commission. So that's part of the charges that he faces in terms of breaking that law and inciting public violence, and is linked to the violence that took place on the 1st of August by, insinuating the fact that they would not allow any result that did not confirm Nelson Chamisa as the winner of the election.
There's a lot of speculation. I mean, the MDC was critical of the Zambian president, Edgar Lundu, who imprisoned the opposition leader. I remember the claims around that. So was his rejection, was Zambia handing him back to Zimbabwe for purely political reasons?
Well, I think it does seem to be some sort of political motivation around the matter, because he felt Tendai Biti that he had a genuine case in as far as leaving the country and being on the run. But the indication or the response that we got from the Zambian foreign minister that his case lacked any merit, and therefore he was denied the political asylum that he was looking for on that day. So I think there does seem to be some sort of political insinuation or links resulting in his deportation from Zambia, although the authorities there did try to downplay that and simply said they looked at his case and they felt that it wasn't strong enough. But again, we do know that Tendai Biti has been critical of the Lungu administration, so there's no reason for us to rule out that perhaps it was a point or a time to really pay back in that context for the Zambian authorities now, because he was within their territory.
All right, so he's been released on bail. So when does that really start playing out in the courts again? And what about Nelson Chamisa? I mean, he said similar things, did he not?
Sorry, I just lost you there briefly, Francis. Could you repeat that again?
I said Nelson Chamisa made similar statements to Tendai Biti, saying that the MDC was in the lead. Are there any legal proceedings against him right now?
No, at the moment there's nothing that has been taken, any action in that regard being taken against him to charge him for anything at this point. And I think it came up even today, the press conference that he held earlier in Harare, where he was asked if he would accept a result, really, if should it emerge from the courts that it was not in his favor. And he didn't really give a clear-cut answer. His response was, let's wait for this process to be finished, and then we'll make a statement regarding where our position is. So there seems to be some sort of toning down over the last couple of days, perhaps even after the violence that we saw and restraint, from the MDC Alliance and from its top leadership as well, in terms of the statement that they're putting out and being more reserved and cautious and not wanting to be seen as being insightful or being reckless with their statements. And you saw that even today, when he was asked that question today, what would be the course of action, and he's maintained that they would like to maintain peace and to go through the process that are at hand, one of them being the legal route which they've already taken up, and we're seeing that restraint from Nelson Chamisa and the top leadership right now.
So waiting for the court process to finish. Ray, we haven't heard much from Robert Mugabe, the former long-time leader. We heard before the elections that he was saying he would not be voting for Emmerson Mnangagwa, though. And apparently his wife, Grace, speaking over the weekend. Just tell us what she's been saying, what her activity is right now.
Well, that was the last time we heard from the former First Family, Robert Mugabe and Grace. They did come out on election eve to indicate, like you're pointing out, that they are not going to support Zanu-PF and they've basically turned their back on Zanu-PF, and their support would be with Nelson Chamisa. And he hasn't issued any statement. There hasn't been any response. I suppose perhaps they are also looking at this court process to see how it will unfold, and perhaps we might hear from them after the conclusion of the process that's going to take place on Wednesday, and to get some indication of what their thinking is and what their position is. But obviously on social media, people who were seen close to them are making their views known. They are airing their views and concerns around the entire process, not hiding the fact that they hope to see the victory of Emmerson Mnangagwa being overturned by the courts come on Wednesday, and Nelson Chamisa then being put in as the president of Zimbabwe.
There were reports that Grace Mugabe had been promised the MDC vice presidency. I mean, Ray, if that were true, firstly, how has she been seen? How has she been spoken about publicly by MDC leaders? And how do you think that would be received by MDC supporters?
I think the claim that she was being offered a vice presidency has been denied over a lot of times by the MDC Alliance. They have said they have no association or any intention to give any vice president to her. And I think the fact that Grace is seen as a very divisive character, and they are aware of the fact that having in their ranks would really be something that would alienate them from their supporters. They're being very cautious around that. But of course, the rumors they've always thrown around, we've seen reports as well in the state media suggesting that there is some sort of conversation that had taken place between Chamisa and the former first family, and in particular with Robert Mugabe. But all of them, these players, have denied this in public and say they have no relationship whatsoever. There were claims in the run-up to the election itself that the Mugabes were funding Nelson Chamisa. But, on election eve, when that question was put to the Mugabe to say, are you funding Chamisa, they denied this. So there's always just been this cloud of Mugabes and Chamisa that has just been playing out over, this entire election process. And something to be seen. Some MDC Alliance senior members have been vocal to say perhaps, it could have been a fatal thing to have the Mugabes on election eve come out and endorse Chamisa and, publicly saying that they were lending support to him, and maybe it's time will tell, what the impact of that assessment will have or has had in terms of, the political stroke of Nelson Chamisa and the MDC Alliance at large.
All right, Ray, so let's just wrap this up. What you're saying basically is that certainly on the streets, we're not seeing any sort of demonstrations like we did after the polls. So Zimbabwe peaceful going into this court challenge, but I guess it depends in the end if both sides will accept the court outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. I think at this point in time we're seeing no indications of people intending to go out into the streets. The police earlier today issued a statement to say that parts of the city center will be closed, roads will be cordoned off, even the roads near the Constitutional Court building itself are going to be cordoned off, and one would also read that as a precautionary measure because authorities don't want to perhaps caught, off guard, given that the events of the 1st of August are still quite fresh. So we've seen, a statement being put out to say that particular roads in the city center will be closed. They will not be accessible for 2 days, for the 22nd and the 23rd, and basically, some people are making the call to say, why not just declare Wednesday a public holiday and just allow people to watch what will unfold in the courts on Wednesday, and then people can just stay indoors. But I guess at this point, really, there hasn't been any indication of either side refusing to accept the result, and I think it only now rests with the 9 judges of the Constitutional Court to make a determination, and then we see what the reaction will be from both sides.
All right, and that will be broadcast live, not confirming, but those reports are still coming out this evening that the Justice Minister in Zimbabwe has decided to deny permit visas to allow the South African lawyers to be part of that legal challenge. Not confirmed at this stage. We do know that that's a matter set down for Wednesday. All right, that was Sunday Times journalist in Zimbabwe, Ray Ndlovu. Sorry for that earlier error on my part. Sunday Times report reporter. We'll get more from him at a later stage. Remember that we value your comments on this, on other interviews as well. Send them to us on Twitter, #FullView. You can also view this and other interviews. Go to sabcnews.com, our Facebook page, and of course follow us on Twitter.